Good day, everyone. I am Karin Cabel from Bachelor of Science in Forestry, first year student, and today I am going to present to you my advocacy for the IPs, entitled Think, Reflect, and Respect. Many of the 110 ethno-linguistic groups in the Philippines experience discrimination, degradation of resource bases, and armed conflicts. In the interest of clarity, the term indigenous as used in the Philippines refers to ethno-linguistic groups or subgroups that maintain independence throughout the colonial era. They are unique social and cultural groups with ancestral links to the lands and natural resources where they live, inhabit, or have been displaced. In short, they have authorities in all of their ancestral domains. The term indigenous, when applied in the Philippine population, can be a deceptive misnomer connoting alien migrant populations who have over time become majority ethno-linguistic and cultural group in the land and thereby pushing indigents to the fringes of socio-cultural inclusion. The indigenous people, to a large extent forgotten by the government, are in the midst of problems. Physical isolation does not shield them from being caught in the crossfire in the ongoing armed conflicts in the country. Many suffered as internally displaced persons, and some killed or detained and tortured as suspected members of the armed opposition groups. Lack of access to basic social services, education, sustainable livelihood, farm to market roads, and health services contribute to their continuing poverty. These are their struggles against development aggression, which lead to loss of ancestral domain and self-determination as well as to environmental destruction, are met with harassment and human rights violation, including political killings. Now what are we gonna do to preserve them? First is to focus on the priority of the indigenous people. They can have a choice in their own way of living, get control over their own education, healthcare, and so on, unless their lands are secure. That's the overwhelming priority. All other issues are secondary. If their land rights are recognized, tribal peoples thrive. Second is to protect the IP's ancestral lands. Indigenous peoples in the Philippines face a range of threats from the way they frequently describe as development aggression. As they struggle to defend their land, much of it is in the areas of forests or mountains that are rich in natural resources, and so conflicts often arise with companies, many of them based outside the Philippines, who want to exploit those resources, mostly without the consent of the indigenous peoples. They took advantage to the IPs because they know that the IPs do not have the power to protect their land. So we must help the IPs to protect their ancestral lands because it means a lot to them. And that's the only place where they live comfortably. Without land, indigenous peoples have no livelihood, no identity, and no means of survival. Third is to encourage the government to fulfill wider rights. There is a human right to education, and a human right to an adequate standard way of living. And there is also a right to development, the right to be included in the development processes which can affect you. The right to development includes the fulfillment of civil, political, economic, social, and cultural rights and freedom. And the last is raising public awareness. I believe that public awareness is very beneficial and significant for the indigenous people and indigenous communities. This is our responsibility of all. There is a lot of mistrust for good reason, but how we inform ourselves and understand our own complicity in consumption and policies that sustains the needs for production, profit, and exploitation is absolutely necessary. We can begin we can then begin to understand the impact on indigenous peoples, their territories and lands, As an indigenous person, our relationship to the land is the heart and soul of who we are, our identity, and our survival. In today's modern generation, we tend to disregard the IPs because we thought that they are different without knowing their everyday suffering. Let me tell you something. Before we are born in this world, the indigenous people are already living their lives. They live peacefully and happily in their respective ancestral domains. Not until we, greedy people, came in the picture. We, we tend to steal their lands to build buildings and big establishments. We stole their rights to live in their ancestral land where they originally belong. Indigenous people can protect their lives and their ancestral domain on their own, so we need to help them. The more voices the government hear, the more chance we can give them back their life. It's not too late to help them. I made this advocacy to wake us up in our selfishness. It's time to raise our voice to the IPs who needed us. The more voices it takes, the more chance we can help them. Because I strongly believe that the IPs are the key to our national identity and the missing link to the highly contested Filipino portrait. And this is not because they are unique, but rather because they are our living memories. A memory of a pre-colonial Philippines that has persisted and survived through centuries of colonial power struggle and modernization. So that is my advocacy, and thank you for listening.